welcome. You have just tuned into South Star Classroom. Is this episode 207?
Yeah.
We are really making moves, okay? Happy Tuesday to everybody. It's me, Jubilee, and I got Dr. Charles Cole III, and we're about to do my favorite part Charles this is really starting to, connect to him, this whole part, even though he acts like he doesn't
Live from the
care.
pits of hell.
Oh, don't worry. I'm gonna just keep going. At some point, you know what? Let's give it till January 2026, and then this will be maybe a part that he enjoys and misses. But anyway, how are you doing, Charles?
I'm fine. I'm here. You know what I'm saying? My big brother just showed up. He usually comes in right before, but the way Batman disappears is how David appears. So I love it. I'm good though, man. I am it's been an interesting sports season for stuff. My Cubbies are struggling, much to David's chagrin, but we're down 2-0. It's not over yet, and we'll see how the rest of the series goes. And I'm a little tired, but I'm happy to be here, and I love this topic. I really do.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. David, welcome. How do you do? What's going on with you?
All right. Welcome. Good to see both of you. Things are good, busy in the land of they call it Bandtober, right?
Oh.
Lots of band activities with school fundraising, right? Because there's never enough money. And what else is going on? Just work has been good. It's nice, thinking working to branch out. Got some potential new clients coming in the pipeline, so more to come on that. I'm here. I love this topic too. I can't wait to get into it because I've got some feelings about it.
Right.
And I'm excited to hear this. Awesome. All right. Well, shout out to Omar Yanar, our other co-host who isn't with us today, but he'll be back in a couple of weeks. And of course, he will surely have a rant ready for us. And won't we love to hear it when he shares it with us when he returns?
All the time.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into today's topic, right? It's about single-sex education, right? Let's talk about the history a bit. We're going to talk about a little bit of relevance, impact, and whatever else anybody in the chat and my lovely co-hosts want to add, all right? So today we are diving into the layered history of single-sex education, where it started, why it existed, and how it shaped learning across the world. From ancient Greece to pre-colonial Africa. I did a little research because I was like, is it the same? Was it the same in Europe and Africa? And so I was curious to find out a bit about that. I was curious about the difference between ancient Africa and Europe. But yeah, there were missionary schools, right, to modern universities. Single-sex education has meant very different things depending on who was being taught and who held the power. So let's look at the timeline, right? So single-sex education, it has deep roots that stretch across continents and centuries. And in ancient and medieval Europe, formal education was almost entirely only for boys. So think ancient Greece, Rome, and early church schools. Girls were usually taught at home if they were taught at all. And then meanwhile, in pre-colonial Africa, education was also gender specific, but not in the same way. It was community-based. It was cultural-based. Boys and girls were taught separately through rites of passage, apprenticeships, and family traditions, not formal schools, right? So if we fast forward to the 1500s through the 1800s in Europe, we see the rise of elite boys' boarding schools and convent schools for girls. These institutions aim to shape moral character and prepare students for specific social roles. Leadership for boys, domestic life for girls. During the same period as colonialism spread, European missionaries introduced single-sex schools to Africa. And we know what happens when the colonizers come, right? Their goal was not empowerment. Their goal was to civilize, right? Cause the Africans to be more civilized and to train Africans for service roles in the colonial system. Boys were educated for clerical or labor positions, and girls were usually trained for, you guess it, domestic duties. In post-emancipation era across the African diaspora, in places like the Caribbean and the US, Black communities founded their own single-sex schools as tools for empowerment and self-determination. Schools like Spelman College for women and Morehouse College for men became engines of leadership, education, and cultural pride in the face of segregation and exclusion. And then by the modern era, single sex education in Europe and the US began to shift. Many schools moved away from moral formation toward academic excellence and leadership development. In Africa and the diaspora, some single sex schools remain while others transitioned to co-education. But the legacy of these institutions continues to shape educational landscapes today. Right. And then I would just want to share a couple of things about K-12 and higher education, and then I want to get your initial reaction to this information, right? And so I think you can already clearly hear the difference between the purpose of single-sex education in the European world versus in Africa and the African diaspora, right? And so I was thinking a bit about what was the impact on K-12 and higher education, right? And so in the K-12 space, right, Europe single-sex schools is shaped, like we said before, class and gender roles, right? And it was all for the elite, right? Shaping spaces for the elite, right? Prep schools, they still exist today, right? In colonial Africa, these schools often reinforce gender and racial hierarchies, right? So after independence, many countries expanded co-education through single-sex schools, and they still remain influential in many regions, okay? So at the college level, though, Europe and the US saw women's colleges like Wellesley and Mount Holyoke become powerful incubators for women's leadership and social change, right? Meanwhile, elite men's colleges produce generations of political and economic leaders, right? So before I go into our first question, I just want to hear your initial thoughts to the information shared about the history of single-sex schools and the origins.
I don't have much of a, I was going to pass here. I don't have much of a comment on it. The history is the history. I'm just taking that in. But David, go ahead.
Yeah, I think thank you for doing that research. History is definitely very interesting. A lot of things that I didn't know about. So I think it'll set the stage well when we dive into it. And I mean, I think it also just, it's so, whether you have single sex schools or not, at what grade level, what are the communities like? What are the cultures like? There's like the whole like kind of religious piece of it. It's so complicated, and I think this modern school system that we're kind of, working to dismantle. Oh, sorry about that. My dog.
My dog.
It's all good. It's gonna make Jubilee's little dog start pirouetting.
She looked around like, what you gonna do? You ain't gonna do nothing. Go back to sleep. No worries. But thank you for that, David. I think it'll be great for us to transition. Did you have more that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think she needs her own school of her own.
See, there you go. Argument over.
School.
Just very bad manners. What I was going to say is obviously like education, formal, informal. I mean, it's at a certain point, schools started to look like they do in this country maybe about 100 years ago, right? And so I think that's kind of the time frame that we're toying around with right now.
Yeah. All right. So let us, now that we've got the history kind of laid out there, let's talk about relevance and impact, right? Does single sex education make a difference, right? And of course, we can always look at it through the lens of, Black and brown children. We can start up here and then really, hone in on Black and brown children. But when boys and girls learn separately, what differences have you noticed in how they participate, focus, or speak up? Does it really make a difference? And if so, for whom?
I mean, there's data. Like we were talking about this beforehand. I'm a big I studied Jawanza Kunjufu for a long time, but he talks about the benefits of like where appropriate, like single sex classrooms, especially for boys, and less distractions, and they can focus, and you could tailor things more to just how boys and girls are like, you know, socialized in different ways. I just dropped in our group text a study from Harvard that said female students in all female classes experience less stereotype threat and perform better in their math grades than their female peers in co-educational classes, with no difference in their language grades. And then also, like, I think of Spelman and Morehouse. Like, I just think of what those institutions are. Nobody's forcing anybody to go to those places. People are going there by choice and choosing to. And I looked it up. If you are, Spelman does allow for trans folks. So if you are a biological woman and you transition while at Spelman, you can stay. If you are somebody that applies and identifies as a woman and you can get accepted, the only thing is if you transition earlier and are living as a man before you get in, then you are treated like a man and can apply. And I know there's been some challenges to like sororities and fraternities and things like that. And it seems like there's been a lot of headway. So personally, I think that single sex schools as an option are fine. The same way I don't care about a parent choosing a private, charter, traditional, whatever school. I think a parent should be able to choose. Maybe David has a really good reason that he wants to ship his son off to an all boys boarding school. Like maybe there's that's not for me to, that's not my business, especially when you have stats and data from over decades that are showing that there tends to be improvements. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, thank you for that, David.
The question is, can they make a difference? And so I think it's important that we have to think about it in terms of, you know, the different stages of development. So like, does it make a difference in the early grades? Does it make a difference in the adolescent years? Does it make a difference in the like early young adult years and then college, right? And I think you can ask that question about all different levels and kind of have a very rich discussion. I think at the younger grades, because I've seen it, I've worked in, I've led TK8 schools. Young boys and young girls develop, psychologically, and the way their brains develop differently, right? And that's a scientific fact. Like, how differently? Most of what I've seen is that girls tend to develop intellectually, call it, at a faster rate than boys. Like, how fast? I don't really know, but there is a delta there. There's a difference. And you see it play out in elementary classrooms across this country, right? Where, young girls and who knows how much of it is nature versus nurture, right? Because, young boys and girls are taught to be different ways in the home, and they take that into school. But I would say I've seen it. I've seen classrooms where, even in a straight, like a second or a third or a fourth or a fifth grade classroom, the difference between most of the boys and most of the girls is like very, very startling. And for a teacher, that's very difficult, because then you have to you're not just lesson planning for like different like academic levels, but you're lesson planning for different teaching techniques to address different like developmental ranges where your kids are at, not academically, but just developmentally. So I think it's a very complicated question. The other thing I would add is for I think at all grade levels, but in the younger grade levels, there is like kind of pressure to perform or to like not get the answer wrong, and a lot of that kind of falls along like a boy girl issue. And so when you isolate like just boys or girls, right, you can kind of tend to open things up a little bit more, I would say. And Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole other world where we could talk about, like single sex schools for Black and brown children, and how those can be kind of used as mechanisms to build up a sense of like brotherhood or sisterhood, that you can't do in a heterogeneous educational setting.
Yeah, I've seen even traditional schools do like the school is definitely, everybody, but they have moments where, okay, boys over here, girls over here. Like, I mean, it's just kind of called for us. What Jude was like, can you tell me why this is coming up? Like, is it like an issue? Does somebody just feel like there's too many single sex schools? And did somebody have like a bad experience and just make this their like world, like their life mission to be like, F that? It's never like Bill.
No.
Bill is not, I can't really. I'm not reading any of Bill's comments out loud. Okay, I don't need to read about. I can't do it because I want to keep the show. So, but maybe somebody went through what Bill was talking about and was like, "I'm taking them all down." It was like, "What's going on?"
No, you know what it is. I'm always thinking about like education and. My oldest son, before we relocated to Maryland, he was in a single sex school, and it was the best. Like, it was the best thing ever. And when I was an assistant principal, I partnered with this school, right? Because I had several Black boys, in my school. They were Black, right? They were low income families. They had IEPs, and we're in a workforce of educators, of teachers. And educational leaders who are majority women. And so, like, I think for girls, right, you can probably find a place where you fit, somebody who resonates with you, someone you can connect with, sometimes way more easily than a young man. So I just started thinking about, the impact of like single sex education on my son. And then I started thinking like, was it the single sex education, right? Or was it good teaching?
Yeah, exactly.
I just knew with human beings and knew because here's what drew me to this school, right? This school is called Eagle Academy. Rashad Mead, he's a colleague of mine from New Leaders, opened this school, right? 6 through 12 school in Brownsville, Brooklyn, right? That's where Mike Tyson is from, right? It's like, and he opened this school. And when I partnered with him, when I was at AP, I used to take my boys over there. They used to play video games, right? They had sports. They had chess. He was like, nah, we're not going to do basketball. We're going to do lacrosse because you're going to have a better chance of getting a scholarship if you play lacrosse. There's a lot of people playing basketball, like very strategic. But it was like a boys' world. Big screen TVs, right? High level, high expectations, right? But high level of support. And like, we're doing rigor here. We're learning, and you're going to know how to stand up. You're going to wear a tie. You're going to come to school dressed, you're going to learn how to speak and advocate for yourself, be respect, all the things. But when I started looking at it, and I think it was all the things, I don't necessarily think it was only single sex, but that's where my pontification came from, especially in this world where I'm like, what's right for kids? Like what really helps kids thrive and grow? And is single sex education one of those things? So
I mean, with different things are right for different kids, right? And again, there are some kids that thrive in those environments and some don't, right? Like this, it's just like anything else. And I think when we try to find a one-size-fits-all solution, we end up having so many unintended consequences that just were not necessarily needed. Nobody's putting a gun in your head and saying you got to go be a Morehouse man. Nobody's saying you got to be a Spelman sister, right? And the thing is, when you meet a Spelman or a Morehouse graduate, instantly. Like, it's like meeting a Marine. Like, my dad and uncle are Marines. It's like me. It's annoying to that level in a beautiful way, though, right? Like, a Morehouse man has a way that he walks and talks and distinguishes and things like that and takes pride in himself. I think that, again, who's trying to take it away? Bill said, I'm not using any bad language. No, Bill. But what you did say, Bill, was single sex education is prevalent in Catholicism. I went to an all-boys school in Oak Park, Illinois. A really traumatic experience, like swimming.
Oh, goodness.
Priests. Oh, yeah. That's why, Bill. That's the last one I'm reading, Bill. You're a wild boy, Bill.
A traumatic. Why don't I see?
Because you know what? Because it's not your job to see them. Because I have to read every comment that comes in, and Bill, I love you participating. I'm just not gonna read none of your stuff. It's okay.
Not swimming nude for priest. Oh my goodness.
This is what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and again, and on a serious note, right? And look, let's be honest, there are some situations that probably, you know, like with that type of inappropriate behaviors happen. And guess what? It happens in co-ed schools too, all the time. Yes, ask Penn State.
I think
so. Yeah,
I think there's definitely there's like a school choice angle here. I would agree. Like I think especially now with the latest push on school choice, you know, again that we've talked about on the show, talking about mainly like in private schooling, you have a lot more choice and options, right? You can get actually like, you know, scholarships now to attend private schools in many states. And a lot of those schools are religious and single sex programs. But overall, like, and I've worked in some of these settings before. So I just looked it up. It's quite difficult to run a public school that is single sex under the Title IX, right? Of the Education Amendments of 1972. However, they were revised in 2006. If participation, I'm just talking about public schools now. If participation is completely voluntary, right? And if the program serves a legitimate educational objective, for example, improving academic achievement, providing diverse educational options, whatever. Schools must also offer substantially equal co-educational alternatives in the same district so that no student is forced into or excluded from opportunities because of gender.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's tricky. And I think, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, in public schools, like just because a public school says it's single sex, it doesn't mean that they can deny admission to girls.
Right.
Just because the 100 Black Men charter school in Oakland, California was a program designed around the needs of young Black men, it doesn't mean a white girl couldn't attend there. Right.
Right.
But the way they set them up is like, well, you probably don't want to go there. And that school didn't do so well. But that's another story. I do think. Go ahead.
No, I was laughing. You said that school didn't go so well.
I mean, not no idea. The execution is hard to run a school, man. It's tough. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we know that overall. So here's the thing: we know that overall, girls I'm going to do some big, broad, general blanket statements now. Girls tend to do better in reading and writing, right? And overall GPA. Boys tend to do better in math and science, right? That's what the national data tells us. Not disaggregating for race or anything like that. But we know once we start taking it apart, you know, boys and girls of color, Black, brown, low income, special education have the worst outcomes, right? So it makes sense to say, okay, if we're trying to fit everybody in through this one system that's not designed for everyone, and we know we've consistently gotten crappy outcomes for these kids, like let's just keep doing it, or maybe let's think about you know, single sex or even like race-based programming. I know that's not the topic of this today's discussion, but it's definitely something that I've been interested in. I mean, I worked with, during my time at Oakland Unity High School, we worked with kids that had been in the public school system in Oakland for 8 years, and they came to us as 9th graders. The girls, for the most part, were ready to get to work, like had to do a couple of years of makeup work, you know, just to prepare for, you know, a 9th grade and a 10th grade college prep curriculum. The boys, you know, I'll be totally honest with you, we're so far behind. We did the best that we could do. And several of them rose to the occasion. And for many of them, it was incredibly challenging because they had gone through a school system that had basically forgotten about them, you know? And so in my mind, I'm like, I want to open a boys' school in Oakland, California, a high school, right? Not like a last chance high, call it whatever, but a rigorous program where we could really get down to the business of focusing on the needs of young men that had gotten left behind in the system, right? I can't tell you how many times I had to pull all of the boys into the auditorium.
Exactly.
To have a conversation
all the time
about who in the hell Who in the hell is shoving toilet paper down the toilets?
Who's doing it?
Do we need to have a more strict bathroom policy? Do we need to have an adult at the door? And meanwhile, the girls are in class studying, and I'm talking to the boys about clogging toilets, right? And we did it. We had them all together, and I was like, man, we're like living in two different realities here, So
yeah, I mean, and again, and I don't. This is just it's just there's so many opportunities for slippery slopes. If you start to say, well, this is outlawed, well, it's like, all right, well, cool. Well, then what's to stop somebody from saying, all right, well, it's prisons. Let's just everybody together. Like, well, for obvious reasons we can't. Well, what's the obvious? Well, what do you mean, right? Like, again, there's a difference between somebody being sexist and misogynistic, or saying like girls are dumber than boys, or boys are dumber than girls, or whatever the case is, versus acknowledging that sometimes there are just some differences with, like, especially during development, especially in those early grades and ages, where that might be beneficial for boys. And listen, and it's not like Morehouse and Spelman don't do things together. It's not like they don't go to each other's parties, right? Like, they're essentially a shared campus, but they are in school and in class, separately. I just don't. I don't know, man. I feel like it's somebody's crusade, and now they're kind of trying to check off boxes on the board. I think it's like we've gotten to this level of progress for women's rights or whatever. Now let's go another step. Like, let's do it. And again, I don't think if a parent and a student doesn't want to be forced into that type of situation, all right, cool. But why take these? Most of these, the vast majority of what we're discussing, are choices that are made by parents. So why at this point, it's not my business. If they build it and people want to come to it and they filling it up and there's a wait list and all that stuff, Bill said something good. He was saying, it's the teaching, it's this. Maybe it's all of that. But you know what else you got that we never consider? Happy students and parents that continue to send their kids there. And it's like, all right, cool. It's not my business at that point.
If I'm the superintendent of a large school district in this country, I'm definitely like researching what it would take to offer more options within my district. That could mean charter options, a STEM school, a Montessori school, a language school, an arts school, a military school, and also single-sex programming. Right? We run a boys only district program, and it's built up around these pillars. We run a girls only academy, and it's built around these pillars. You don't have to go. You don't have to send your kid there, but it's a choice. So, I mean, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, especially when districts are losing enrollment. It's like you want to open up options for families, and it's like, I mean, well, you have to figure out if families want that. And I think a lot of them do. I mean, I think at the high school level, I don't want to get ahead of your podcast here, but I mean, for boys and girls, just like, it's like my son doesn't have a job yet. I'm on your job at school. That's your primary focus in life right now is school. We feed you, we clothe you, we do everything. All you have to do is do your schoolwork, engage in schoolwork. Right. And then you start to get, around 13, 14, 15 years old, girls start coming into question. And all of a sudden, it's like the brains just go crazy. It happened to me, right? It happened to me. And I think it happens to all of us, and I'm like, not to say that they shouldn't have, I mean, it's a slippery slope because you also want them to be prepared for the real world, right? So you don't want them to be, having gone through schooling in this like echo chamber. But sometimes people just need less distractions just to get down to the business of education. But like, you're going to live your whole life. You can go out in the weekends or after school, but right now you're going to focus on school, and it's going to be, very focused, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what you all are saying. I love what Bill said about the problem is with the teaching and not the learning. Fix the teaching. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, first of all, I agree with what you said, David, in terms of just having options, right? And I think, Charles, you alluded to this too. Like, let's have options. If parents want a certain kind of school, like, let's ensure that they they have that, you know. And like the school that I was talking about that Sydney attended when he was in middle school for a short time, there was a great need, right? It was a huge need for that kind of school, right? In Brownsville, Brooklyn, where you had, you know, several young men. They may not have had, you know, dads at home, right? That whole cultural piece, right? They were falling behind in school. They were the kids that possibly weren't sitting down, didn't learn this way or whatever. And then you have a school that's like, it doesn't matter, right? You're a black boy, you're a brown boy. We believe in you and we can teach you. We got your number and we can help you, you know, be academically successful and socially emotionally sound. You know what I mean? And so
I told you I got stuff to say.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'll hold my answer so David can keep. I like when David's fired up. You got to feed that beast, you know.
All right, David, go ahead, David.
well, if you want to finish, go ahead and finish.
Yeah, no, I just was connecting to, you know, what you both were saying and to what Bill was saying in terms of like what makes these schools any different, right? How they started is definitely, you know, how it started, how it's going. Right. How it started definitely ain't how it's going, because the reason it was started is not the reason I think it's still being used now as widely. I think in some places, yeah, they want to try to domesticate a women, but now we're talking about STEM and STEAM and developing young ladies to be high-level mathematicians, as we've known men to be for all of these years, right? For them to go into fields that were thought to be only, you know, for males, right? So nobody's trying to train to be a nun. Or, I mean, not nobody. I know that they still have like the Catholic schools, but you get my point. It has shifted, right, from the original purpose. All right, David, back to you.
I mean, so I want to push back on some of the many comments that Bill has.
I was about to as well. So I started what it sounds like creationism. I was like, yeah, they do have schools. It's called Catholic schools. Like,
and Nicole is getting Bill,
Listen,
but God is the lead scientist. All right, Nicole. Hey.
Well. Speaking of God being the lead scientist, I will tell you that, you know, in again, big, broad brushstrokes, and I've seen this pan out in schools. On average, boys tend to require and seek out more physical movement during the school day than girls, right? The prefrontal cortex, which is part of your brain, manages impulse control and sustained focus, develops later in boys than it does in girls, right? Now we can say, well, ADHD is not a real thing. That's definitely like a something that was created and labeled. But, you know, we know that boys are diagnosed at 2 to 3 times the rate than girls are with things like ADHD. So we're dealing with 2 different biological organisms, the boys and the girls, and they are different, right? On average, girls are able to, you know, sit in classrooms, sustain attention longer, have finer motor control skills earlier on, right? Look at the handwriting. Again, general and broad, but a lot of truth to them and scientifically backed up. You know what else is true is that we know this, and we can talk about black and brown boys, but boys are over disciplined in our school systems.
Oh, preach about it.
So you want to like fit everybody through this one machine, this meat grinder, right? And it's going to come out different. And it does come out different in the outcomes. I'm not even talking about academics, but I'm just talking about about discipline, you know, because you're holding everybody to a similar standard when boys and girls biologically, physiologically are actually quite different.
Yeah, bro. Can I jump in on this too? Because somebody's going to throw in race and I wanted to double check my numbers. Like, I'm fine with HBCUs. I'm fine with Latino majority schools. I'm fine with, and people might be like, well, what about white? You can't say that. Yeah. If you look at, well, no, you can. And they do have it. HBCUs across the board are 76% black. 76% with non-white people taking up the remaining 24. You want to know what BYU's racial breakdown is? It's 80% white. It is for all intents and purposes, it is a historically white university, right? And again, nobody's making you go to BYU. Nobody's making you go to one of these places. I just think that, again, sometimes people want to go beyond to solve a problem. What's the problem that needs to be solved? I could see if there was a public mandate that said we're making now. If they were like, we're forcing all schools to be single-sex schools in the public sphere, now we like you out your mind. Like now you're overstepping. But most of these are private institutions, or they have very strict guidelines they have to follow if it's a public institution around those things. And if we're saying that there's a problem with boys, if all this data is coming out, there's always been a problem when we try to help black boys, and they was like, you can't over-index. But now that white boys are having a problem, now the world seems to acknowledge there's a problem with boys.
Yeah, maybe everybody's talking about boys.
Maybe some of these white boys that have been shooting up schools or shooting at political speakers that look like them at rallies, maybe they benefit from some type of listen, I'm a black revolutionary type thinking person. I also lived in Appalachia. I have zero problem if the JD Vances of the world built a school in Appalachia that was really focused on poor white boys and like really did like and did some development with them. It's not my business. Like it's if especially if it's in that private realm. Also, I love that everybody is in here chatting. We got Bill always, Nicole, Ray, friend of the show. Good to see you. You said, fellas looking good. He added you too, lady. He got you. You acknowledged it. But welcome to the show, everybody. But again, it's something that I'm not passionate about. But as we talk about it, I'm getting more passionate because it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, we just like being agents of chaos. Like, who is this single-sex school bothering? Like, I just really want to know. I'm just so curious.
Well, listen. Hold on. Let me just throw in something for Black girls, okay?
Yeah.
Because just like, Black boys, right, in different ways, there's over-criminalization of Black girls too, right? Yeah. It's a disproportionate way that they're treated by the juvenile justice. And
hi, Mama Jubilee. Hold on. Georgia just came in real quick, y'all. I'm sorry.
Hi, Mommy.
How you doing, Mama Jubilee? David, we got to, we ignore Jubilee when her mama come on.
All right.
How you doing, Miss Georgia? Hey, Miss Georgia. I like Miss Georgia.
Lord. So I'm representing for the Black girls, right? This disproportionate way that Black young ladies are treated, right, that often is stemming from a harmful stereotype such as adultification, right? Black girls are seen as less innocent because our Black and brown boys have the same issue, right? Less innocent, more adult-like, sassy than their peers. It leads to harsher discipline for minor infractions, increased use of force in schools, higher rates of suspension, greater entry into the school to prison pipeline, right? So we know that these are connected to implicit biases and usually a lack of community-based resources that contribute to these disparities. But we know that this runs rampant in any kind of school, single-sex school, co-ed school. It's just an issue, right? Which brings me back to the point of that Bill said earlier. It may be more about the teaching, and I'm not disagreeing with you, David, in terms of separating out the differences, because I do agree with that. Girls and boys are different. But the reason why I keep going back to the teaching is because do you know how to reach them with their differences, right? Like you get into a classroom, you're going to have some students that have IEPs, some multilingual learners, you're going to have boys, you're going to have girls, right? Mm-hmm. Are you savvy enough to know how to reach the group of students that's in your room? Right. And that goes for a co-ed classroom as well as a single sex. Right.
I was going to say that's a problem now, though. Right. Like that's and here's the thing. Most of these single sex are some type of private. There's some version of private. And here's the thing. Nuns with no teaching credentials been out teaching traditional school teachers for a long time. So all I'm saying is, like, I get it. We can nitpick it to death. Right. Like, listen, if we were in Houston and Houston said we're starting a private school for aspiring astronauts and this is the criteria to get in, and it's like just rigorous math stuff or whatever, and families lined up in droves to get their kids in there, I would say kudos. Like I don't think you need less specialty schools. I think you need more. I think you need like I think if there was a carpentry track type school, like look, if you look at the problems of our country,
we need it.
We should be having new schools pop up every 10 years that's like, hey, this is where the future is going. Like let's have a school that integrates this and does these things. It's just a fight that I don't know needs to be. I just haven't heard a good enough argument to where this is even on the docket. Like I just don't. Has any of y'all ever been forced or made to be in a, and when I say forced or made, I'm not talking about the kid being happy. I'm talking about their custodial parent not wanting that.
All right, so wait, let me throw this out there, right? Because part of the debate could be, right? It's not relevant anymore, right? It's not inclusive because you're right, it's discrimination, or it's because it's separating them or whatever. It's not all inclusive, and it's no longer relevant because it does not replicate, right, or doesn't mirror the real world. Right. So how you're going to spend, and I'm just on the other side. I don't necessarily believe this.
I'm just saying, don't lose that, Jubilee. But if that's the case, if that's the argument, then college doesn't represent the real world, because the female to male ratio in universities in general is way crazier. So are we going to take colleges away too?
No, I mean, but I'm just saying, people like, no, I want my little child to know how to interact with the opposite sex. I want my girl, my daughter, to know how to be in a high pressure situation with a bunch of high performing males and be able to call up her algebraic equations, quadratic equations, right, just like the best of them. And she's not going to get that in a single sex school with all her other little girlfriends.
So is she only in the single sex school? Does she not have after school? Like, this is what I'm saying. No. Usually single sex schools are usually really intentional about making sure that there are moments when you have that. Like, I'm sure Spelman and Morehouse swap professors all the time, or they'll be like, yo, we're gonna lead this women's studies class on the Spelman camp or whatever, right? Like, all I'm saying is, like, you know what? I'm arguing this is, I'm kind of beating this horse dead. I just, the logic is so easy to counteract that it's like what are we arguing about? Like, where's the people and why? And I need to understand these people that are just standing with the picket lines and the signs saying no more single sex schools. You know what I'm saying? Where is it? I just don't know.
I've seen, so in what I have read, right, I've seen it more like overseas, but I feel like it'll be a matter of time, especially because of discussing gender equity and how other, genders have emerged. And because there is that belief that, like, is this relevant? Like this, if we look at the origin, right? And I'm really more so talking about the European origin, because I think how it was done in Africa is still relevant today. We still need it. And I think we'd be in a different place today if we still were doing those things that they did, back in Africa in terms of how they educated, males and females, because it was for more than just domestication, right? But if we're looking at how it was done in Europe, it's kind of offensive now. And so easily somebody could be like, absolutely not. You're not just going to teach my little Diane how to sew. Like, she is an engineer. She about to be, when they do the next Hidden Figures 2, she finna be on there drawing on the board, drawing these different things to figure out how we're gonna re-enter into planet Earth. She's not gonna just be crocheting, right? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think now as it stands, what used to exist and what was fueling the purpose of these schools is so far gone from where we are now that someone could definitely hitchhike on the back of that truck and ride it all the way to there. Like, let's get rid of this. It's not equitable, and it's just not relevant anymore.
Got a package at the door. Y'all keep going.
All right, David, what you think? And I'll wait till Charles comes back before.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this discussion about single sex based schools, public or private, whatever they are, and how that kind of connects with, or can exist in contradiction to a lot of the conversation that we're having now about gender, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting thing to consider. But still, I think if, it obviously exists in private schools. We have like the academies, and then we have the single sex, religious based schools, right? But in the public setting, again, I think it should be an option. You know, I think I would love to see school
Agree.
districts really. I mean, school districts have such a hard time innovating, right? It's like, oh, you have a STEM school. How cool is that? You know,
Yep.
but you can have so many. I think every school district should have, like, again, I said, they should have a public, you know, military school. They should have a public Montessori school. They should have a Waldorf school. They should have language academies. They should have STEM academies. They should have, you know,
Full immersion
entrepreneur,
schools.
yeah,
Yes.
entrepreneur-based, like big picture schools where kids are out in the real world learning, and they should have schools that focus on particular sex, boys schools, girls
Absolutely.
schools, right?
Yep.
Offer that to parents. You know, you don't have to go. You don't have to go, but if you feel like that's what your child needs,
Absolutely.
it should definitely be an option for you within the public school system. For sure.
David, you know what me and Jamoke had pitched? This is when David was still there, the other David at the office, when we were trying to say the West Oakland corridor with MLK and Lafayette and stuff. We were wanting to do, there was just so many Arabic folks that were there, and there was a lot of, and it was the last like kind of black area of that place. We were like, yo, AAMA, African American Male Achievement, do like a dual immersion with like black boys and these Arabic kids. And like, what if we would have started having these black boys that could speak Arabic? And like, they already was so close culturally at that point. Like, if you don't know West Oakland and how it's shifted, we have an Arabic population that hangs out with a lot of black kids, and there's been a new kind of culture that's emerged. We could have built something great and new in West Oakland. There could have been like a subsect of all these black boys with all this stuff that around how they should love themselves, and then they built a version for the young ladies as well. Like, but what if you have all these black kids speaking Arabic, like, and these Arabic kids understand the history of black people in West Oakland and their shared connection? That you have to make public education more exciting. The public sector does not want to compete for students, and that's really what this comes down to, right? Like, and I get that some people are purists and are like, there should never be competition, but that's not life. That's not real life, because as soon as you get enough money and you a certain type of parent, you like, I'm shipping his ass over there. You from New York, they going to Brooklyn Science. Like that, you don't, like, come on, man. Like, and we have to, if we really care about that stuff, we would make those options for some of these kids that are like, that don't have that type of money, but still deserve these type of immersive like opportunities. So I didn't mean to get all excited on that and jump in, but and they just were scared to try it. And I'm like, why don't the schools are gonna close down anyway? We don't have, the building is bleeding kids. Why don't we try something new and at least go down fighting? Why don't we go down at least with something that'll be studied later on? And maybe if we fail, somebody else to implement it better than we did. But why wouldn't you try if we're trying to save like this black culture in that place? But when white can overtake, see, this is the thing that we're leaving out of these conversations. A lot of these places are homogeneous. There's a lot more white people in this country than there are black people. And that's why it's so scared of these Latino folks, because they are expanding. Y'all are about to be the majority. But like BYU is like, ain't nobody telling BYU they got to diversify. No, that's a Mormon school. If you go to BYU, I expect you to I'm not Mormon, cuz if I want to play football or basketball at BYU, that's what I'm signing up for. Like, we're not going, I don't think it would be fair for us to make them change who they are. You know what I'm saying? I'm using something other than black things to give a different perspective. Like, I'm not offended by that. I'm just not. People get to make choices, man. I hate us trying to make public choices for people. It really, it's beyond paternalistic. It just makes you an asshole. Like, I don't even want to use a SAT word. Like, you just a jerk. Like, you just a jerk. No, David, I don't care. Like, I know that you know schools and all this, but you don't get to pick the type of education your kid got. Why? What are you talking about? If Jubilee wants her sons, the data talks about the importance of black boys being around positive mirror black men. And if you could build a school for black boys that has the type of men that they need to be around, why would you not do that? Like, I just don't understand it. I think there should be a black Mexican immersion school in LA. I truly do, especially with the type of tensions and beef. Like, if there's a thing that can happen and this new generation can come up bucking some of that stuff, you know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't you do it? I just really don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it either. I mean, again, to connect what both of you are saying, we need the options and we need as many effective options as possible, right? I think that regardless of how we have shifted from the origin of schools or single sex education, I think it's always going to be necessary, right? And even to take it out of like the school context, right? Right? We both we grew up in the church, right? You always got these conferences. You got women's conferences, you got men's conferences, and the women get all excited, right? You got women Thara loose, if you know anything about, Bishop Jakes or Juanita Bynum or old school, Creflo, right? Joyce Meyer, women's getting excited to come together and do women stuff and have women conversation with no men around. And when the men's conference come, it's the same deal, right? And this is grown men, right? These are grown women still wanting to have that connection, that camaraderie, right? That ability to really be vulnerable in a space because you get me, you see me, you understand where I'm coming from because we're similar, right? We have different lives and all of that, but we have our foundation is very similar, right? And so I think if we look at it outside of the education landscape, it's like, yeah, we single sex conversation, single sex community, right? It still matters. It's still something that helps to shape us, as human beings. And people might say, oh, well, I don't have any male friends if they're male, or I don't have any women friends if I'm a woman. But I still think that there are conversations and spaces that we go when we are one with another that we may not go when the opposite sex is present if we're honest about that. So all right. So now we kind of touched on our equity and changing perspectives and whether or not it's still relevant. And so now we're going to go to final thoughts and anything else that you want to share prior to, right? So after all that, what can Black and Brown families take away from this discussion? Are there ways to, and I know you touched on this a little bit, are there ways to make schooling more supportive, more fair, more empowering for our kids, whether in single sex, or co-ed or Montessori or language academy options? And I'm throwing it to you, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm looking at some California data right now. You got me thinking about this. So I forget who mentioned it, maybe in the comments, but or you said it, Jubilee, or maybe Charles, talking about like the school to prison pipeline, right? It starts very early in the elementary years, right? It starts when you walk into any elementary school, and there's typically going to be a Black boy or a Black girl or a brown boy or a brown girl, sitting in the back of the room, and sometimes they're in the hallway, right? They start the process of disenfranchisement, right? Like separating. Oh, I'm different from everyone else. I'm not allowed. 2 out of the 3 days I missed a lesson, right? Because I'm not part of the group, right? And that continues on. So I think we can, if we keep doing the same thing, and I agree with Bill, I think it's definitely a function of teaching and reading. But I will tell you, looking at California's continuation schools, these are like the schools that students go to when they're quote unquote pushed out of, traditional programs before they drop out of public education altogether. About 70% of students in California's continuation schools are boys, right? So we have a problem. And most of those are Black and brown boys. So if we don't do anything on the front end with school design, we're going to get these same outcomes, right? We're going to get these same outcomes. So I want to say that. And also, I think, I want to say, like, whether it's single sex or schools that are allowed to function with a particular cultural theme for Black boys, for brown girls, for Black girls, whatever it might be, in a public or non-public setting. That's not to say that people don't believe in like integrating young people into society, because we're going to all be integrated into society, right? Are we going to become a salad bowl, or are we going to become a melting pot, right? That's a bigger societal question around assimilation. But I think at the end of the day, what's most important is that young men understand what it means to be a young man. And young girls, I sound like the old man now, and young girls understand what it means to be a young woman, right? And on top of that, in our multicultural society, like, you have to understand where you come from, and appreciate and honor your culture, right? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to successfully navigate the rest of your life, right? Especially in these like trying times that we're living in. So, I'm not arguing for, raising young people, having them attend schools that are going to, have them be isolationists when they grow up. No, I mean, I think integration is important, but you obviously have to understand, who you are as an individual to be able to successfully do that and to contribute to society. So there.
Yeah. Charles?
Can you restate the question? Because you asked final thought and then you had like a
it was
there, so I want to.
I got you. Yes. So I said, after all this, like, what can Black and brown families take away from this discussion? And are there ways to make schooling more supportive, more fair? Yeah.
Man, exercise your liberty. Black families, white families, brown families, Asian families, whatever. Red fish, blue fish. I don't care. Like, exercise your liberty. And when you don't appreciate your liberty, they will try to take it from you and tell you that they're doing you a favor. I don't care. Like, I'm not worried about the influx. It's not like all these single sex schools are like popping up and taking money or doing whatever, right? Like, you got to do what's right for you and for your family. And I just feel like, so that's something that I think people should take away from it, is that people tend to count out poor people, whether they be Black, brown, or whatever. And they tend to use your social status as you not knowing what's best for you and your kids. And then they get really paternalistic. I've had people like a professor tell me, Chris Stewart was there. We were the three of us, because I almost got into a fight with this guy. And he basically was like, we were like, well, why you get to choose? Like, he hated charter schools. He was like, why you get to choose? It's like, because I can. It was like, because I make better decisions than them.
Wow.
And it's like, see, that's the rub. That's the thing, right? It's like, you think that you better than these people, and that let's say the school sucks. But if David and Jubilee decide to send their kids there for whatever reason, at that point, if I've given all the information and the options and that's what they choose, that's their decision. That's their kids. And just in my final thought, just a way I dealt with this when I worked in a youth org. We got a young person help change his life around in Oakland. And then, like, and he got into all these colleges, but he chose the military, and then all the staff were trying to talk him out of that. And I had to call them in. And I was like, that's not your fucking business. Like, you did your job. You got his grades where they needed to be. We got him to be more responsible. He is looking at a bigger picture, but he got a plan. And maybe it's not your, it's like when people push you to go vote and then they find out you voting for somebody else and they don't want to give you a ride no more. It's like, what was this for me and for society, or was this for you? Was this for your ego? And I think that's where I'll leave my final thought. It is not a large issue. There's not a ton of money being allocated this place. There's not like, and I think parents, fuck that, not just Black parents, because I know sometimes people tune out when we say Black and brown. I think all parents of every kind of race do share this thing where they want their kids to do better, even if they own some fuck shit. Like, you should do everything in your power to make sure your kid has the type of upbringing that you want them to have. That's your right. Maybe I'm sensitive to this, David and Jude, because I read a lot about slavery and I read a lot about people having no autonomy over themselves. So even these small bouts where, like, there's no beef, there's no like parent being forced. Like, if Jubilee and David are married and they have a disagreement, then you know what? That argument happens in their household. That's not our business. And we got to stop overreaching between liberty and minding other people's business. It would behoove you to mind your own business.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I was just thinking about what happens if this conversation were to swing the other way. And because a couple of people were like, oh, it's not relevant anymore, that they remove the option, right? Because that's the thing as well, right? If we look at what is happening, with gender, we have non-binary, we have transgender, we have they, them, we have all the different, right? And folks moving away from boy versus girl, right? Again, if we don't exercise our liberty and understand that we have autonomy in these spaces and all of that, because of a small majority, right? It could be threatened, right? So I think, it is definitely, as parents, as families, as guardians, as caretakers, or what have you, for us to continue to lend our voice to the fact that this is still an option that is desirable, right? Maybe not by all, but just to be able to say, you know what, I think that the way this educational program is crafted is single sex and it meets the needs that my child has in these areas, or whatever the case may be, or is connected to our long-term plan, whatever your reason is, that it can be met through that versus it being canceled out as an option, right? That's like somebody coming around saying, we ain't gonna have no more preschools. We ain't gonna have no more Montessori schools. They don't use enough metrics. Like, we would never allow it, right? And so I think the same thing stands for single sex education. It has a place, right? It may not be for everybody. Everybody may not love it, but it has a place. And hey, damn it, you know how I feel. Like, if you're going to be an educator, you're going to open a school, make sure that you got high quality education and instruction and social emotional learning, all the things that a good, strong school needs, whether it's single sex or any other kind of school, because that is the goal, to ensure that we are empowering our young people, right, to be global citizens, right, to be responsible, to be hopefully kind, right, and to have a life worth living that's going to leave a legacy and impact here on earth, right? So that is my final thought. That's David Castillo. That's Dr. Charles.
Before you close this, Drew, yes. I gotta say this for David and just the other people that's not Black watching. There's a stereotype of us as Black people. There's a bunch, like chicken watermelon, all that stuff, right? Whatever.
Yes.
But there's one about us not changing our smoke detector batteries and it's just beeping. And there was a beeping throughout. So just for the state of the race, just for the
not just a Black thing. It's not just a Black thing.
I'm just saying, Black people. I'm Black, so I hear it about Black people a lot. Just for the record, David, I just need you to tell me that that's your smoke detector and not the sister with two young men living in her house.
My thinking around the smoke detector is eventually the battery is going to fully die out and it'll stop beeping,
and then it will shut the hell up, because what is it doing? Anyway, it's mine. Whatever, Charles. Okay.
I didn't know. I couldn't tell whose it was.
Listen, a few weeks ago, I said I had good news. It's because I moved not too far away. Right. I knew my building. The rent was going crazy. I found a new place, more space, less money, and everything stayed the same. So I have been moving since last Thursday, and the one beeping thank you that you hear is the damn thing that they need to fix, right? So
listen, you have boys that are about to be young men. Like you're good. You don't have to do nothing. You just buy the battery.
Right. Yes, buy the battery and they'll put it in. You're right.
David corrected me and said it's not just a Black thing. I'm just telling you, we get shit about it. I'm gonna find memes and send them to you all week, David. It's a thing. So Jubilee. Anyway, please don't let the race down again.
I can't guarantee it's gonna be fixed by next week because I got other stuff to do. Okay, I can't feel my foot, and I'm
give the project to your oldest boy. I will mentor him. Let him. This is not the way. We're gonna fix it. That's why I got to go to a single Black boy school because of this shit right here. With that, so Omar, that's you. I'm Dr. Cole. We will see you all next week. Same bad time, same bad station. Peace out, y'all.
Terrible.
No,